Okay, excuse the duds, but I just got back from work. And I should note I am filming this right before Raw, although it probably won't be posted until after Raw, but it doesn't really matter anyway because I'm going to be talking Bound for Glory, and we'll have, this video will have very little to do with WWE anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'll post something about Hell in a Cell at the end of the week, and we'll get there when we get there. But before I talk about Bound for Glory, I did want to make note of this one thing from last week. I did want to acknowledge that Lou Scheimer passed away. And if you don't know who Lou Scheimer is, he was the big creative genius behind Filmation Studios, which was big into kids animation during the 70s and 80s, maybe even before then. I don't know when they started exactly, but they were behind shows like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which was a big part of my childhood, and Fat Albert, which I also loved, and He-Man's sister show, She-Ra, Princess of Power. I watched that, of course. They also did shows like Brave Star, which was a really cool idea. I think I might be one of 10 people that remembers that show, though, but that was basically it mixed the Old West with science fiction, and when you watch things like Firefly, you see that idea is actually really cool. So yeah, Brave Star was cool. They also did that crappy not Ghostbusters. It's not the Ghostbusters that you're thinking of. But the reason the real Ghostbusters was called The Real Ghostbusters was because this crappy Filmation show existed. So not everything they did was a winner, but although I will say the theme song was pretty cool. I will give them that. But, He-Man especially was such a big part of my childhood, and I felt like I needed to acknowledge somebody that, helped make me a happy kid, and I think that's worth acknowledging. Lou Scheimer, I saw the guy in interviews. I have He-Man and the Masters of the Universe on DVD, the whole show, and in interviews he comes across as like such a genuine, nice, good-hearted guy who legitimately enjoyed making stuff for kids, and was conscious about what they saw and what they were exposed to, and sometimes it went to the extreme with the levels they would go to keep it non-violent or non-harmful towards kids. But he was very conscious about that and what kids are exposed to, and I can respect that. And, like the morals at the end of each He-Man episode, which admittedly were my least favorite part of the show because I kind of felt like as a kid, is like, look, I can figure out what the moral is from the story. You don't have to spell it out to me. But even so, you look at shows like G.I. Joe, which had the famous, knowing is half the battle PSAs, it felt like G.I. Joe did those because the network was telling them to, or maybe Hasbro was telling them to, I don't know. But when you look at Lou Scheimer in interviews, you can totally see it's like he wanted to put those morals into the episodes because he really wanted to, give kids a good moral standing in life. And again, that's very respectable, in addition to putting on entertaining shows for kids. And, by all accounts, he was a very nice guy, loved what he did, was very passionate about what he did, and he was a big part of my childhood. So I did want to give a little salute to the late, great Lou Scheimer, and thank you for all the happy memories. When I think of my childhood, He-Man was a big part of it, so thank you for that. And it's a shame that he's gone. But anyway, back to wrestling. I did watch Bound for Glory. It was kind of weird how I did it because I caught the second half of the Broncos-Colts game, which was really cool, and way to go, Indianapolis. I don't have anything against Peyton Manning or Denver, but I actually grew up kind of a Broncos fan because I liked John Elway as a kid, but it is really cool that Indianapolis beat Peyton. I think that's kind of like, oh, good for Andrew Luck and good for the Colts. That's actually pretty cool that they were able to beat their former superstar. A good pat in the back for them. That's really neat. Especially against a team that people are saying, they're going to the Super Bowl. But I also watched The Walking Dead, which was an awesome episode. Even though I think it's complete and utter bullshit that the character named Patrick, and I won't spoil it, but the character named Patrick is such a pussy little pissant. It's like, come on, man. I already share a name with a brain-dead cartoon starfish, and now this fucking loser. It's like, God damn it. And then in Batman Beyond, there was a character named Patrick, and he had like a rat fetish. And it's like, God, there's no cool characters named Patrick. It's just not fair. we're just a bunch of weirdos, I guess. Not that I'm the most sane individual named Patrick, but it would be nice to be represented, by one cool character. But anyway, but I did watch Bound for Glory, and overall, my impressions of the show, that's kind of my overall feeling. It's like, not stunningly awful, but not spectacular either. It's just kind of indicative of where TNA's at right now, where, the stuff that had no build-up just kind of fell flat, and that's it. And that's what happens when you build a show with really no build, and so much of what they do has no meaning behind it, and the roster has been spread so thin that not a whole lot of the show clicked. There were 2 matches that I really liked, and I will acknowledge those matches. But going through the show, I only caught the last few minutes of the pre-show on Spike TV. I didn't feel like I would have... No, I take that back. I actually did see parts of the Gauntlet match, too. But I was shocked that the Bromans won, but I'll get into that later. And I thought they missed an opportunity there where I probably would have ended the pre-show with Bully Ray coming out on the stage and then having like 20 masked Aces and Eights guys flank him and stand behind him. It's like, well, it's no DQ, so I'm going to get my boys, get the band back together and, just have, but they don't even have to take their masks off. Just 20 masked men that he's going to have go down there as an army and beat the shit out of AJ Styles in the main event. I think that would have been a great visual to go out on. Of course, they didn't do anything remotely like that, but because, the Aces and Eights are such a dead staple at this point that it's like giving us any kind of, making them look threatening going into the main pay-per-view, I think would have been a really cool thing to do, but whatever. Show kicked off with the Ultimate X match, which... Okay, seriously, they need to stop Ultimate X matches. This one was just a random mess. And again, I said that in the preview. It was just a, random match that they threw together, and the match itself was kind of just a random mess. They just did a bunch of spots, and then it was over. And I was like, what was the point of that? It's like, okay, Saban's the champion, fine, but why did... the ladder didn't really... add anything. I thought maybe throwing Hardy in there would bring kind of a TLC element to the Ultimate X, and it didn't really. They just kind of cheated. They used the ladder to cheat, basically, and it didn't really add anything, and the match just never really clicked. It just kind of was like, all right, it started, and then it stopped, and that was it. And it was like, all right, that kind of fell flat. And then there was the tag title match, which wasn't a bad match. It was actually way better than it had any right to be. But at the same time, it's like the Bromans go over, and I think that they could be funny, and but this is a team that never wins, and now all of a sudden they're the tag team champions. It really shows off the lack of depth in TNA's tag division. But giving it to the Bromans, to me, would be like if WWE gave the tag titles to the 3-man band. And I think 3MB is funny. I really do. I am entertained by them. But they're the comedy jobber team. You don't push them to the fucking titles. But then again, you look at TNA's tag division, it's like, all right, who could be the champions? It's just a mess right now. Which is pretty much what I said. So I was like, all right, Bromans won, whatever. I don't care. Before that, actually, I forgot to mention, we got that pointless segment with Bad Influence getting beat up by Abyss. And like, okay, that would have been fine if Bad Influence had gotten the title shot. And, like, let's say they cheated to get the title shot and they, jumped Joseph Park during the match and he got hurt and had to be taken out. And that's how they won the gauntlet. And then Abyss came out and cost them the tag titles or something. That actually would have been a nice payoff, but the way it came off is like, all right, nothing's at stake, nothing matters. It's just kind of, Abyss comes back again. Fine, whatever. And Joseph Park, for a character that I really liked early on, and I really did like that character, but they just have no direction for him now. And what's the payoff? Where are they going with this? It just seems like they either had a plan and they gave up on it, or they didn't know what the ending was going to be, so they just strung it along as long as they could. Take your pick. And it's a shame because I did like that character. Actually, I stand by my idea being a really awesome one, where it would have been revealed that Abyss was the one behind Aces and Eights, but Joseph Park didn't know about it. And in case you don't know, I'm ripping off Fight Club, but I think it would have been a really cool idea if it was the split personality was revealed in a way that Joseph Park is actually the leader of Aces and Eights and he doesn't even know it. I think that would have been really, again, ripping off Fight Club, but it still would have been really cool. And I'm sorry if I spoiled Fight Club for everybody, but I think I've said that idea before, but whatever. Then we got, what came after that? I don't even know. I think it was the Knockouts match next, which was, again, just a random match that had no build-up, nothing, no consequences, no nothing. Lady Tapa came out, beat up the girls, and helped Gail win, and that's kind of the thing that they're going to do with Lady Tapa, where she's Gail Kim's muscle. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I get that you're trying to establish a new monster. You want to have a new Awesome Kong, and Lady Tapa looks good. She's got a good look to her. She looks imposing and threatening, so, okay, I can understand the logic behind it, but, going in, this match had nothing going for it anyway, so it just kind of, again, just another flat match. Next up was Kurt Angle versus Bobby Roode, which was very good. Again, match that had not a whole lot at stake, not much in the way of storylines. Kurt Angle turning down the Hall of Fame bit in the middle of the show was a little odd. I don't know where they're going with that, but Angle versus Roode was a very good match. Very, very good. And it's just it's one of those examples of two very talented guys going out there and making the most out of nothing. And I really liked the match. I thought it turned out really well. Both guys meshed very well. And Roode went over, which kind of surprised me. And I was actually pleasantly surprised because that was a nice shock. And, it's 2 years too late. He should have gone over at 2011. But, it was still nice to see anyway. And I like the finish, too. A lot of top rope moves don't have much in the way of consequences. I always sit there and think, like, a lot of these superplexes and a lot of these, like, Tower of Doom spots that you see, and a lot of these, like, top rope fancy, slam moves, fall away slams or whatever, they usually don't end matches, and I feel like they should. I feel like those should be treated like really devastating moves. So Kurt Angle getting himself knocked out by one while performing one, I thought was a good way to make it look like, make it look like those moves are dangerous. And, that's one of my little pet peeves with wrestling in general, because so many matches have to end with the finisher. And they can't, like, just pick a really good high spot to be the finish. That would be really good. The example I always go back to is SummerSlam 2008, when it was Batista and Cena. And Cena went for a missile dropkick, and Batista caught him with the Batista bomb and slammed him down. And Cena kicked out, and I was like, that should have been the finish. Especially since Batista just powerbombed him and won it anyway. I was like, I think the missile dropkick one should have been the finish. That was a really cool finish. And they didn't take the finish because it has to end on the normal finisher for God knows what reason. But I like it whenever they do things like that. Like WrestleMania 29, the Ryback-Henry match. I thought that ending was fine. The match sucked, but I thought the finish was cool. It was different, it was cool, and makes it look like, people with a lot of body mass are actually more dangerous than others. But Angle Roode was a very good match. Easily the match of the night on this otherwise weak card. But really entertaining and just really good work by two guys that were really not given a whole lot going into it. So at least that match delivered. Then we got the debut of Ethan Carter III, who I have to say, people have told me that Derek Bateman is good. I mean, people have honestly told me, like, no, dude, seriously, this guy's good. And he's got a good look. He seemed okay. People kind of shit on the match. The fans kind of shit on the match, but that's to be expected, given what it was. And I don't have problem with matches like this because you need your filler matches or whatever, and if you want to show off a new character. Like, Goldberg would get squash matches on pay-per-view. The Undertaker got a squash match at WrestleMania 7. It's just to show off a new character and try and build a foundation for him, and I'm fine with that, especially, you got to take your piss break somewhere, right? They can't always be the women's match. So I don't really have as much of a problem with it. I'm not sold on EC3 yet, but he didn't. This match to me wasn't indicative of anything, whether he's good or bad. It was just kind of a nothing thing that they threw out there. But again, he has a good look, and I think the character's kind of funny. He reminds me, I don't know why, he reminds me of Ben Affleck from Mallrats. That asshole from Fashionable Male, son of a bitch. I don't know why. Whenever he talks, I just get that Ben Affleck, Buttman vibe from Lawrence. I'm going to screw your girlfriend in a very uncomfortable place. What, like the back of a Volkswagen? But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Then we got Magnus versus Sting. Magnus won by tap out, which was kind of shocking. Match itself was okay, I guess. Sting still looks old as fuck, but It was nice that they gave a clean win to Magnus. It was like, oh wow, that actually legit shocked me. I don't think beating Sting carries a whole lot of weight anymore, because it's kind of like when Jay Lethal beat Ric Flair, and it was like, oh, what a big rub for Lethal, and I'm like, I mean, who doesn't beat Flair nowadays? It's really not that big of a deal that Lethal beat him, but. And I kind of feel the same way about Sting. Although he's not like job boy material like Flair turned into, it is kind of like, okay, beating Sting really isn't that special anymore. So, I mean, if Magnus had beat Undertaker, who never loses, I'd have been like, what the shit? What the fuck? But, at least they seem to be interested in making Magnus into something, so we'll see if that actually goes anywhere. And him winning by tap out was a little shocking. Match itself was kind of, it was alright. Whatever. And then we got the main event, AJ Styles versus Bully Ray, where AJ won the title. Good ending. I thought the match was a lot of fun. Some people I've talked to seem split on it. Some people think it sucks. Some people thought it was really good. I thought it was a lot of fun, personally. It was kind of a car wreck match. When AJ did the shooting star press to the outside and hit the table, that was one of those moments where my heart just skipped a beat, and I was like, is he okay? Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay. Please tell me, okay, he's okay. Good. It was like one of those like really scary falls, and thank God AJ's okay. But they did a lot of crazy shit in this match, and it was fun to watch, if nothing else. And AJ won, which didn't really come as much of a surprise. It was a really fun main event, and it was the only match on the card that I felt like they had mapped out months ago and probably penciled in months ago. So it actually did feel like this was something that deserved to be on this show. So that was fine. I thought the main event was good. So you got two good matches. But that's Bound for Glory overall. I was glad AJ won the title. But overall, Bound for Glory was just kind of a flat show. You got those two really good matches, a fun as hell main event, and a strong match between Angle and Roode, and everything else I thought just kind of fell flat. And again, it was just indicative of the fact that they didn't build this card up well at all. Like, at all. And it was just, when you don't build up a card well, and the card looks weak on paper, typically it turns out that way in execution. And this one did. And it's a shame because Bound for Glory tends to be a pretty good show. Like in 2005, they had just gotten onto Spike TV, and there was clearly excitement in the air. They lost their main event, and there was still, like, a really exciting atmosphere to the show. 2006 was their first show on the road, so that had a great, big-time atmosphere, and it delivered. 2007, I think, is the best show that TNA's put on ever. 2008, that was another really good show. 2009, maybe not as good, but still really fun and entertaining overall. 2010, at least it gave you something to talk about after it was over. I'll give it that. If I had to give it some credit, like, you walked away from the ending going like, oh wow, we got to talk about this. So at least it, like, left an impression. 2011, that show was good, even though the ending was absolute shit. I mean, the ending to Angle Roode kind of sucked the life out of it, but the show overall was pretty good. And last year's show was pretty good too, and this one was just kind of, that happened. It was a lot like that. It was like, well, okay, that was a show. And it's really a shame that, this happened at TNA's biggest show of the year, because it didn't feel like their biggest show of the year. And hopefully they're able to turn it around and make something out of this, but, who knows at this point. So that was Bound for Glory. That's all I got regarding that show. And I'll be back later in the week. I'll be talking about Hell in a Cell and my thoughts on that show. Again, I'm going to watch Raw right after I film this, so I'll probably have all my material for talking about Hell in a Cell right after Raw is done. But until then, I'm out, and peace out, everybody. Enjoy your week.